Thank you very much. Look forward to that.
Well, great to be with you. I feel very much at home at this forum, being a serial entrepreneur, but I do have to admit that I actually took a real job recently, my first. I thought I'd squeeze in a real job before I turned 65. Perhaps the only company, except for maybe Microsoft being here, I should point that out, but I did have close ties with Microsoft during Bill Gates' era. But I have a certain amount of freedom at Google. My mission there is to get the Google computers to actually understand natural language. I'll talk more about that. But I thought I'd start out by sharing with you some of my own entrepreneurial and inventing experiences. I decided I wanted to be an inventor when I was 5. I'm not sure why that is, but my parents gave me all these enrichment toys. I knew they were enrichment toys because they had lots of little pieces, and you could put the pieces together in different ways and create different inventions. So I took them all apart and created this big inventory of little pieces, and then I would go through the neighborhood and bring back broken bicycles and broken radios and take them apart and add to my inventory. This was an era where you would allow a 5-year-old to go through the neighborhood and do that. And I had this idea that if I could just figure out the right way to put these things together, I could create transcendent effects. I didn't have that vocabulary when I was 5. I came up with that word a few years ago. But I remember the feeling, if I could just figure out the right way to assemble these things, I could create magical effects. I could solve any problem. And this was kind of a philosophy for my family. The family religion was the power of human ideas. I remember my grandfather coming back from his first return trip to Europe after having fled Vienna in the summer of '38. So this was '55. I was 7. And he came back and he described having been given the opportunity to handle with his own hands some original documents by Leonardo da Vinci. And he described it as a religious experience. But these were not documents handed down by God. These were documents created by a human, but they had changed the human condition. They had overcome problems. It was really the power of human ideas that was being communicated. I discovered the computer at 12. I stole an assembly language and Fortran programming manual and taught myself to program. A 12-year-old using a computer is hardly unique today. In fact, I don't know a 3-year-old who doesn't have a computer. But in those days, 1960, there were only about 12 computers in all of New York City. I was given the opportunity to use the midnight to 8 a.m. shift, which was great. It was actually like my own personal computer. You had to feed in punch cards. So one of my best friends was his punch card machine. And anybody here remember punch cards? Oh, wow. Okay. When I was 14, I had the idea that we could emulate human thinking in the computer, and I wrote a paper on how I thought the human brain worked and how we could then use those principles to do pattern recognition and AI in a computer. I described the human brain as a series of modules that could recognize patterns, and the patterns were organized in a hierarchy, and we created the hierarchy with our own thinking. And just 50 years later, to the month, I wrote this book, which I'll talk about later, How to Create a Mind, which says the same thing, except now we actually have enough precision in our brain scanning to actually see the brain doing this, and we can spatial resolution of brain scanning has been growing exponentially, and we can see inside the brain with such precision that we can see interneuronal connections being created in real time and firing in real time, and we can see your brain create your thoughts, and we can see your thoughts create your brain because the interconnection between these modules is created by our own thinking. But we can actually confirm with neuroscience these ideas. At that time, I was speculating just based on how it appeared that the human brain worked. I wrote a program that, based on these pattern recognition principles, I could find patterns in music and then write original music in the same style. So I would feed in Mozart or Chopin, then I would write original music that sounded like it was a student of Chopin or Mozart. And that's how I got to meet President Johnson. I submitted that to the Westinghouse Science Talent Search and was one of the winners of that. And that was kind of the beginning of my career with artificial intelligence.